The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's an honour today to rise, as always. And I asked the Minister of Finance a question in the House of Commons several weeks ago, back in December actually, about why European nations were actually withdrawing any taxes on their fuels in Europe to the tune of about 8,000 euros per family, while this government was considering moving ahead with a 30% increase in carbon taxes. I didn't get that good a response, but in the interim, matter of fact, 2 weeks ago, Canada's independent member of Parliament, the Independent Parliamentary Budget Officer, an officer of Parliament, came out with a new report on the whole matter, and I brought it with me here, Mr. Speaker, just to make sure that any of the talking heads on the other side that don't like what it says can hear from it directly. In 2023-24, the federal fuel surcharge set at $65 per tonne. We estimate the government will collect $11.8 billion in fuel charges from the 7 provinces where the charge applies. And this will be in addition, the tax on tax here, there's a GST on top of that tax that amounts to $429 million in GST on top of that. The Parliamentary Budget Officer makes a pretty clear case that one of the problems with this is it takes away income tax base, particularly from the provinces. But it talks about the economic impact, and it goes through effectively what will be the economic impact. He says it in 2030-31, once the full $170 is actually implemented, and that province that affects the most is Alberta, with an average of $2,773 per household. Now this is something, and the lowest province that's affected is only impacted Newfoundland and Labrador, with $1,316 per household. Now I know that there'll be much gnashing of teeth on the other side about this because they've been claiming for a year now that this is actually a net positive for Canadians, this tax. Well, clearly it's not. But no sooner had this report come out than my colleague on the other side of the House, the Member of Parliament for Guelph, stood up and said, well, you know, we need to make sure that we do the costs associated with the environment are considered in here. Well, let me tell you, the Parliamentary Budget Officer did a report, surprisingly, on November 8th, 2022, that considered exactly that. Now, the problem with these speculative reports going forward is they are just that, speculative. They're based on a scenario, but one of the things that came out quite clear on it is that compared to every other factor the world's going to face, including economic downturns, recessions, conflicts, everything, climate change will be less of a factor in the analysis going forward. Nevertheless, you take a look at what the numbers are when you do analysis of it, and by 2100, we'll have changed the economy by his numbers by less than 3/1000ths of a percentage point per year. That's a lot, if you say, to be spending tens of billions of dollars on. Pardon me, Madam Speaker, how much time? 1 minute left. I just started speaking. You sure you got the timing right? Okay. Energy costs are by nature inflationary. And there's a reason the Bank of Canada wants energy cost increases excluded when it calculates inflation. It's trim, medium, whatever it wants to talk about, it is about excluding the #1 cause of inflation from the carbon tax, because that's what they want consumers to believe at the end of the day. Even the Europeans don't buy into that, as they've reduced it 8,000 euros per family over this past year because of what they were facing in Europe. Now, I'll say again, in my strong opinion, Europeans, countries are very poor financial and economic managers. But they did give this increase, this rebate back to all their citizens across Europe at the point in time. So I repeat the question I asked at that point in time. Why is this Minister of Finance pushing Canada, punishing Canadians with a 30% increase to an already inflation-causing tax? Thank you.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe we can all agree that climate change is a very serious issue for Canada. Something has to be done about it, and inaction is no longer an option, at least not for this government. The truth is that climate change is already having serious effects in Canada. It is affecting our homes, cost of living, infrastructure, health and safety, and economic activity in communities across our country. While addressing climate change is an environmental imperative for this country, it is also an economic opportunity for all Canadians, and we cannot afford to be left behind. For example, the United States is moving forward with the Inflation Reduction Act, and it is important for Canada to keep pace. Nous ne pouvons tout simplement pas manquer cette occasion de participer à la transition vers l'économie propre. C'est pourquoi nous proposons, dans le cadre du budget 2023, de faire des investissements clés dans l'économie propre. Ce faisant, nous contribuerons non seulement à lutter contre le changement climatique, mais nous créerons également des emplois pour les Canadiens d'une océan à l'autre, y compris dans la province de mon collègue, l'Alberta. Madame la Présidente, our Made in Canada plan presented in Budget 2023 is underpinned by a new federal toolkit for investing in the clean economy. We are proposing a set of clear and predictable investment tax credits, low-cost strategic financing, and targeted investments and programming where necessary to respond to the unique needs of sectors or projects of national economic significance. Budget 2023 is ensuring a clean Canadian economy can deliver prosperity, middle-class jobs, and more vibrant communities across Canada. Now, when it comes to our pollution pricing system itself, I would like to remind my colleague from Calgary Centre once again that it is putting money back in the pockets of Canadian households. En ce qui concerne notre système de tarification de la pollution, j'aimerais rappeler à mon collègue de Calgary Centre qui remet de l'argent dans les poches des ménages canadiens. In 2023, through CAI payments, a family of 4 will have received $745 in Ontario, $832 in Manitoba, $1,101 in Saskatchewan, and $1,079 in Alberta. In addition, those living in rural and small communities are eligible to receive an extra 10%. Households in these provinces started to receive their latest quarterly payment last week. Is my colleague against these payments to Canadian families? Madame la Présidente, notre gouvernement comprend que de nombreux Canadiens ont encore du mal à joindre les deux bouts en cette période d'inflation élevée. Les Canadiens le voient lorsqu'ils vont à l'épicerie, lorsqu'ils font le plein d'essence et lorsqu'ils payent leur loyer. Cependant, je voudrais rappeler à mes collègues que l'inflation est en baisse. L'inflation au Canada était 8,1% en juin et elle est maintenant 5,2%. We do understand, however, that many Canadian families still need some support, and that is why we are supporting those who need it the most, when they need it the most with targeted measures. For example, we proposed in Budget 2023 the new one-time grocery rebate. This targeted inflation relief has been designed to help support the Canadians hardest hit by rising food prices. The grocery rebate would help approximately 11 million low and modest income Canadians and families across the country. This would mean a one-time payment of up to an extra $467 for eligible couples with 2 children, up to an extra $234 for single Canadians without children, and an extra $225 for seniors on average.
The honourable member for Calgary Centre.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I don't know how much I have to beseech the members on the other side to actually read the report that they're referring to here, because they'll find the numbers somewhat instructive. But let's go deja vu all over again, because we can look at the 1980s. There were massive government deficits at the time. That led to high inflation, just like today. The U.S. fought this with what's called a strong dollar policy, which means higher interest rates on their bonds all the way through the economy. This penalized the developing world because most of the developing world has to pay their debt in U.S. dollars and with U.S. interest rates. So this led to a decade of economic stagnation in the developing world. Stagnant, some economies actually went negative over the decade, the 80s to the 90s. So this was predominantly thrust upon the world's poor to address inflation. The one issue that addressed inflation was the fact that there was cheap energy because oil became less than $10 a barrel at the time, and it's primarily there. So let me ask the question again. These are costs. Will the minister take a lesson and acknowledge she's on the wrong path? Thank you.
Parliamentary Secretary.
Madame la Présidente, comme le démontre le dernier budget fédéral, les Canadiens peuvent continuer à compter sur ce gouvernement pour prendre des mesures visant à la fois à protéger l'environnement et à créer des emplois. Nous avons un plan pour faire en sorte que le Canada fasse partie de l'économie propre et nous pouvons tous en être fiers. Of course, we understand that some Canadians still need targeted inflation relief support, and that is why we are moving forward with our grocery rebate. Thank you.